Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. Armenia and Iran, these two neighbors are strengthening their partnership in the South Caucasus. As Yerevan cautiously steps away from Moscow's shadow, Tehran eagerly hops onto the vacuum. But what happens when a small nation's search for security leads it into the embrace of one of the world's most isolated states? At first glance, it might seem like an unusual friendship. Armenia, the world's first Christian nation, aligning with Iran, an Islamic republic. But geopolitical reality often makes strange bedfellows, and these two have found themselves increasingly drawn together. So without further ado, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Iran and Armenia are looking to tighten cooperation, especially when it comes to defense. The two countries have historically shared warm relations and continue to do so despite Yerevan's recent turn towards the west. The border between the two countries, while small, plays a crucial role. It gives landlocked Armenia some breathing room, while Iran gains access to an important trade route. Nagorno-Karabakh is also quite close to this border. Iran, through its leadership, has sent a clear message regarding Armenia's territorial integrity.
The shared border between Iran and Armenia is not just a geographical demarcation. It is a historic and strategic link between two ancient nations.
That isn't to say that Iran is not interested in playing ball with Azerbaijan either. Tehran has maintained cordial relations with both post-Soviet countries and serves as a sort of counterbalance to Turkish influence. With statements such as these, Iran has been drawing an important line.
We believe that Karabakh is an inseparable part of the territory of Azerbaijan, and we continue to respect it. Our presence here will strengthen the unity between you and us.
Iran's recent comments come in the wake of Azerbaijan and Armenia trying to reach some sort of peace deal following the former's conquest of Nagorno-Karabakh a couple of years ago. Since this conflict took place right on Iran's doorstep, it should not come as a surprise that Tehran is interested in ensuring that it is fully resolved, especially since Russia has been preoccupied as of late.
Let's zone in on the east-planning portion of our show. The relationship between Iran and Armenia is one of the most important for the South Caucasus. It's shaped by a wide variety of factors and dates back well before the fall of the Soviet Union. Let's take a look at why these countries are so close.
Iran and Armenia do not share a particularly long border. It is only a 44-kilometer long strip of land. Yet it is a crucial one for both sides. For Armenia, a little landlocked country, which has been isolated by its enemies at times, it is a vital political lifeline. For Iran, it means access deep into an important trade route and a crucial region which plays a role in its rivalry with Turkey. Ever since the collapse of the USSR, Iran has supported Armenia's sovereignty and statehood and has acted as a kind of counterweight to the Azerbaijani-Turkish partnership. Armenia and Iran are also working together in several economic sectors, such as energy, infrastructure and transport. For example, Iran exports large amounts of natural gas to Armenia in exchange for electricity. There's also a cultural connection between these two nations. Iran is home to several 100,000 ethnic Armenians who, despite the country's strict Islamic regime, have enjoyed relative religious and cultural freedoms. While Iran has not always presented itself as its region's most reasonable actor in recent years, especially in regard to the West, when it comes to Armenia, Tehran has shown itself to be capable of very surprising serving of realpolitik.
And now let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Recently, the defense ministries of both nations formalized their cooperation with a memorandum that many see as a subtle yet significant pivot in Armenia's foreign policy. Now, historically, Armenia's security has been heavily dependent on Russia, its longtime protector and primary arms supplier. But the Kremlin's recent actions, or rather inaction, in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, coupled with Russia's own distractions in Ukraine, have prompted Yerevan to reconsider its strategic partnerships. Enter Iran. Tehran is eager to capitalize on regional shifts, particularly as it seeks to counterbalance increasing Azerbaijani and Turkish influence, both of which Iran views with deep suspicion. Azerbaijan's successful territorial gains during the 2020 conflict and its strengthening relationship with Israel and Turkey have deeply unsettled Tehran, prompting Iran to bolster its northern flank. This year, Armenia and Iran demonstrated their budding cooperation publicly through joint military exercises along their shared border, a symbolic yet potent message aimed squarely at Baku and Ankara. Now, these exercises, while modest compared to massive NATO or Russian drills, represent a new strategic calculus. Armenia, signaling its willingness to diversify its alliances, is effectively sending a warning that it will not be pushed into isolation. But why would Armenia risk complicating its relationship with the West? Well, the answer lies in necessity. Armenia's leadership recognizes that its current position is shaky. With traditional ally Russia preoccupied and unreliable, Yerevan has turned pragmatically towards Tehran. Iran, equally pragmatic, sees Armenia as a critical buffer against encroaching Turkish-Azerbaijani ambitions and as a route to circumvent economic isolation and sanctions imposed by the West. Yet this partnership does not come without risks for Armenia. Western nations, particularly the United States, have viewed Iran as a pariah state due to its nuclear ambitions, human rights abuses, and support for regional proxy militias like Hamas and Hezbollah. Armenia now finds itself delicately balancing relationships that could complicate its aspirations for closer integration with the West. Moreover, Yerevan's deepening ties with Tehran could trigger alarm bells in Brussels and Washington. American policymakers have made clear their discomfort with any state deepening strategic ties with Iran, potentially risking Armenia's fragile engagement with the West. Now, Iran sees Armenia as a stable, relatively friendly nation through which it can project power and influence without direct confrontation. And while Armenia's pivot towards Iran might appear pragmatic in the short term, the long-term geopolitical consequences remain uncertain. And now here to shed more light on the issue is Silvia Boltuc, Managing Director at Special Eurasia. Silvia, welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so now, Silvia, Armenia and Iran share a relationship that dates back to well over 2,500 years. They have roots in common linguistic ties, cultural ties. I mean, Iranian citizens today are flock Yerevan in high numbers. They enroll in, among others, medical universities. They've opened cafes in Yerevan. But now, how do those ancient connections influence their diplomatic relations today?
Well, I'm quite sure that they influence the current diplomatic relation, but it's not only that. Of course, Armenia has some geopolitical constraints, given the fact that since here the borders with Turkey and Azerbaijan are close. Of course, Iran has become, the link to Iran has become even more vital. And this is the reason why they're trying also to protect the southern region, the Sinai region, which is the link to Iran. But of course, the historical diplomatic relation, the connection between the two countries are a positive aspect of their relation that they can exploit even to enhance their cooperation in various fields.
I mean, you just mentioned there, with the neighbors, but now also, given the conflict, the tensions that took place, in Nagorno-Karabakh, it gave rise to numerous years of chaos, of conflict between Iran's two neighbors, right? So now, how does Iran balance its relations with both Armenia and Azerbaijan? I mean, Iran has a large ethnic Azerbaijani population, but has also sided with Armenia politically. What's the strategy here?
Well, when it comes to Nagorno-Karabakh, we have to recall that Iran has always supported the return of the region under Azerbaijan control. And this is not because of political sympathy, but because the international relation, according to the international relation, which is based on the last map of the Soviet Union, the Nagorno-Karabakh region was under Azerbaijan. And in this regard, Iran has always sided with Azerbaijan. Although we have to say that this was a situation where the international law and the right of self-determination were at equal level, equal important, I would say. On the other side, when it comes to the southern region of Armenia, the Sinai region, and the creation of what Azerbaijan called the Zangezur corridor to connect Azerbaijan directly with its exclave Nakhichevan, Iran has always stated that it is against of such an outcome, and it will always be supportive of Armenia and even defend Armenia in case of an aggression.
Let me ask you this. Now, Azerbaijan here, you mentioned it quite a lot now, expanded, of course, its military partnership with Israel, including billions in defense contracts, and the EU continues to significantly invest in Armenia. Now, my question to you is, how do these external alliances and investments influence the strategic security and economic cooperation between Iran and Armenia? I mean, how are Yerevan and Tehran navigating these complex geopolitical pressures?
Well, on one side, Iran has been quite vocal about the fact that he doesn't welcome foreign presence along its border, so also in Armenia. And the fear both of Russia, also not only Iran, is that Armenia can become a territory from which intelligence activity from the Western world directed towards Russia and Iran can take place. Indeed, we saw in the last year that Pashinyan, the Armenian Prime Minister, received multiple visits from both representatives from the English MI6, the intelligence of England, and also from the CIA, from the United States. So there are some concern, of course, coming from Tehran. On the other side, I think that this joint drill, they conduct together, I mean Armenia and Iran, it's a proof coming from Yerevan that they have not changed their position towards Iran, and they still want to be partner and to enhance cooperation also when it comes to security.
What about, I mean, you mentioned Russia here a couple of times, of course, also a very important aspect here. What does the Russian influence play out in today's context between Armenia and Iran?
Well, it's quite controversial, actually, because we saw a shift in Armenia security posture and in its foreign alliances. Of course, we under the Biden administration, really at the end of his administration, Armenia signed a strategic partnership with the US, and this caused, of course, some disagreement also with Russia. The fear of Russia are the same of Iran, clearly. But on the other side, during the last week, we saw the visit of Russian Foreign Minister of Lavrov in Armenia, and he multiple times stated that the situation in Armenia is not like that in Ukraine, that Armenia remains an ally, a partner inside also of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, and also a friendly country which has never shown some racist attitude towards the Russian culture and the Russian language. So Russia is trying to maintain a relation with Armenia, while Pashinyan seems more willing to shift towards the Western world.
So do you think that Russia is actually worried about its relationship with Armenia going not where it wants to go, given the fact that Pashinyan says and wants to gain closer ties with the West, with the United States?
Well, yes. Any Western interference along the Russian borders will be seen as concerning for Moscow, of course. But on the other side, we have to say that Russia has a very strategic relationship also with Azerbaijan. They signed a very important agreement in the field of security. I think it was 2 days before the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, and so they still have an important foothold in the Caucasus. They have also, speaking about the Southern Caucasus, also a strong relation with Abkhazia. So I think that from some point of view, they want to work to maintain relation with Armenia, but I would not say that they are necessary in this moment for Moscow.
And how has Armenia navigated its economic ties with Iran while maintaining this relationship with the West, particularly recently? And as you mentioned, I mean, Pashinyan has been outspoken towards the fact that Russia didn't really do much to help Armenia in the second Nagorno-Karabakh war.
Yes, as per the economic relation with Iran, actually between Iran and Armenia, there are some exemption from the sanction towards Iran. I mean, Armenia is exempted from some sanction which were applied on Iran. And this was because Europe understood that the link to Iran is vital for Armenia to survive. Since the two borders with Turkey and Azerbaijan are close, Armenia needs Russia and Iran for its transport, of course, for receiving goods, gas, electricity. So they understood this vital connection and they were exempted from sanction. And from this reason, of course, Armenia became also a strategic important for Iran, which invested hugely in common infrastructure, in also in exchange with university, and now also in security. Let's remember that this was the first joint drill in the history along the border. And this marks also a shift in Armenia policy, because till September 2024, along the Norduz-Agarak border where the drill take place, it was the Russia Federal Security Service to safeguard the border. Until January 2025, now there are Armenian border guards deployed. So we assist in a shift also in their security posture.
Looking ahead, Sylvia, what do you see as the main challenges and opportunities for Armenia-Iran relations, and also how it could impact Europe?
Well, I think that Armenia might be a country which can be like not negotiation, but favoring the relation between Iran and Europe. Of course, we have to wait of the outcome of the negotiation on the nuclear deal, because this will make a huge difference if, in case, it will be signed, because a sanction will be lifted from Iran. And I can foresee in this case that many Western countries will be willing to re-engage with Iran, also from a trading point of view, or in the oil and gas field, and so on. But in this moment, I think that Armenia can be like a mediating country when it comes to relation with Iran. I see this possibility. And on the other side, I would say when it comes to security, it is not yet clear if the Western world will intervene in case of an Azerbaijani attack towards Armenia. Azerbaijan has been very assertive. He wants the southern part of Armenia. He often referred to it as Western Azerbaijan. And for the first time, I would say, recently, last week, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, has affirmed very staunchly that the Trump-Vance administration is working hard to prevent an invasion of Armenia. So therefore, admitting that there is the risk. And I think since Europe, I don't think that Europe will deploy some military or help, maybe impose some sanction on Azerbaijan. So the question is, will the US intervene in this case? And if not, will Iran? So I think that Armenia is also considering the possibility of Iranian military to defend the country from a possible Azeri attack.
And all this while, of course, that Israel, as we've seen before, will be aiding Azerbaijan in this, because their eyes are also on Iran. Thank you so much, Silvia Boltuc, Managing Director at Special Eurasia, for being with us here on Eastern Express today.
Thank you for having me.
And we move on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Ukraine's border guard says some 49,000 draft-age men have been detained at border areas and checkpoints while trying to leave the country since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion.
Ukraine currently doesn't allow men aged 18 to 60 to leave the country due to the imposed martial law. Nonetheless, thousands try their luck at fleeing the country. All the different kinds of illegal border crossing schemes have had a severe impact on the Ukrainian armed forces' manpower shortage. There have been reports that the Ukrainian army has faced certain challenges in holding back recent Russian advances due to a lack of troops. The men often try to cross the border using illegal methods such as forged documentation. Many of them aim to reach European Union countries such as Poland or Romania. Previously, Ukrainian authorities avoided providing the exact number of draft-age men trying to legally cross the country's borders.
The president of the Italian-Russian Chamber of Commerce says that around 70% of Italian companies operating in Russia did not leave in the wake of the invasion. According to Vincenzo Trani, many Italian firms are in worse positions to leave than their German or French counterparts.
Italian businesses operating in Russia, usually fashion brands, agriculture companies, industrial equipment manufacturers, and food producers. The ones that did leave after Moscow's full-scale invasion were companies with a very small presence in Russia, state-owned companies, or firms whose products were directly impacted by Western sanctions. Both those who left and those who stayed have suffered significant losses. The Italian companies still operating in Russia are reportedly questioning whether the decision not to withdraw from the country has even been worth it. In contrast, for example, many German investments in Russia were insured by state export credit guarantees. This means that when they pulled out, they were able to claim some sort of compensation. This is not the case for many Italian companies, who have apparently been left with nothing.
Russia's tumultuous relationship with Armenia seems to be headed for even less green pastures. The Russian foreign minister has blamed the war in Ukraine for the lack of arms supplies for Armenia.
Armenia has relied on Russia for military support for decades. This aid has been crucial to Yerevan's cause when it comes to its standoff with neighboring arch-rival Azerbaijan. Yet today it seems that Moscow is able to do less and less for its Armenian partners with each passing month. Sergei Lavrov now says that due to being forced to, quote, fight all of Europe, Russia cannot supply the promised weapons to Armenia. What makes the situation more disturbing for the Armenians is that this equipment has apparently already been paid for. Yerevan hasn't been idly waiting on Russian help, however. The country has recently been making overtures to other world powers, such as the United States, France, and even India for arms supplies, breaking off with tradition.
And that's all for this episode of Eastern Express. I'm Diana Skaya, and stay with us here on TVP World.